Progress in Action. Tonight, I have a gentleman back who I had him before as an activist, and now he has come back as a candidate. So he is running for, uh, it's called House of Delegates, correct?
Right.
In West Virginia, District 35, Mr. Rusty Williams. So thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So West Virginia, I mean, I've had Lee Carter on, so I know he's House of Delegates. Does anyone else have House of Delegates besides West Virginia? Because I've never heard of it other than that.
I'm sure, it's just a bicameral legislature. We have we've got 100 members in the House of Delegates, and then we've got 36 senators. So, that's kind of our system of checks and balances here in West Virginia. But yeah, there's multiple states with bicameral legislatures. They just call it different things.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you've been an activist for a really long time and a very involved activist. You've been through some rough shit. You went through cancer, and that kind of activated you to do a lot of positive things. Can you kind of touch on your story and how you came to even open for Bernie rallies and share your story?
Yeah, I was just going through life like everybody else for the most part. Before I got sick, I would have been perfectly happy spending all of my time creating art and music. Was working in a tattoo shop. I loved my life. I loved what I did, and I woke up on Mother's Day in 2012 in the most excruciating pain I had ever been in. And, I tried to play it off, and I was just kind of like, let's get through the day and go celebrate with family, and we'll deal with this later. But I was in so much pain that I could barely walk. So I went ahead and went to the hospital, and the very next morning, it was confirmed that I had testicular cancer. And they told me that I needed emergency surgery. But when you don't have insurance, I was working in a small business. When you don't have insurance, emergency surgery doesn't mean the same thing as it should. So basically they said, you need this surgery. This is bad. How are you going to pay for it? And I spent probably about 5.5 weeks fighting bureaucrats trying to get coverage. And after the third time, I believe I was denied, I finally called a family meeting and was like, this is it. Cancer wins, because it's really, it's humiliating to have to beg, for a life-saving surgery in the richest country in the history of the world. And I was humiliated. And my mom, though, she wasn't about to give up on that. And she contacted an entity called the West Virginia Catastrophic Illness Commission. And within just probably a week of contacting them, my surgery was scheduled and I was able to, to get taken care of. But in all that time that I spent jumping through bureaucratic hoops and dealing with the bureaucracy of our for-profit healthcare system, the cancer spread, and everything got worse. What started off as, hey, you're going to need surgery, and you can, after 6 weeks of surgery or recovery time, you can get back to your life and everything will be fine, turned into, now we've got to do aggressive chemotherapy treatments, and without the treatments, you've got 4 months to live, and with the treatments, you've got a 30% chance of making it. So, situation went from bad to worse really quickly, and I did what I needed to do, and I illegally used medical cannabis to get through the situation, and I'm a firm believer that is what saved my life. It allowed me to get through aggressive chemo without pharmaceuticals, and basically, as soon as I could walk and, was cleared by the doctors to be around people, because my immune system was smashed. This quarantine situation is eerily familiar because I was quarantined for about 7.5 months in 2012. But as soon as I was able to get up and advocate, I've been pushing for cannabis reform. I'm very proud of the grassroots movement that we were able to build here, that's responsible for the passage of the West Virginia Medical Cannabis Act. So we made a lot of noise in West Virginia. But just like, politicians do, the bill, they screwed it all up. Patients who really need to access the medicine, as the way the program stands now, will not have access. And, from a business standpoint, we had a real opportunity to hand West Virginia small farmers and West Virginia small business people and entrepreneurs an industry that they could get into and revitalize some of these economically depressed communities, and basically give these people a tool to get themselves out of poverty. And no, our legislature, they set it up to where it's basically a 10 company deal. 10 entities will run the entire game from seed to sale. And I'm tired of banging on the doors from the outside. So I thought, it's time to run and hopefully get on the field.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what is your response when you see things like women, single moms getting arrested because their kid has seizures and they actually want to help them and they give them cannabis?
It's gross. It's absolutely gross to me, and if you take the medical part out of it, if you go and research the roots of cannabis prohibition, it doesn't take much time for you to see that the roots of cannabis prohibition are deeply seated in racist soil. Here in West Virginia, when I first started advocating for cannabis reform, while I'm glad and I'm proud of the fact that we were able to get a medical program passed, I've been pushing for decriminalization the entire time. Because these laws, they were designed to decimate the Black and brown communities and white people in poor communities. And West Virginia, the entire state, is an economically depressed state. So they use these laws to keep our jails full, and to keep that revenue stream coming in. And it's really frustrating. And my head, and my heart has been with the situation with George Floyd for the last, couple of days. I'm just like, we've got so much work to do in this country. And I feel like with what we're doing with cannabis reform, here in West Virginia, the national average, you're 4 times more likely to go to jail for a nonviolent cannabis offense if you're Black. That's the national average. In West Virginia, it's 7.6 times more likely. So, while we're moving in the opposite direction, we're moving in the wrong direction here in West Virginia. And to me, it is very heartbreaking to know that patients are treated like criminals, for accessing a medicine that makes them feel better. And those are the stories that I carry into the lawmakers' offices every time I have a meeting. Those are the same stories I carry into the Capitol with me every day. But this problem is a lot deeper than patients. They're ruining communities and ruining lives over a flower. And to me, it's just disgusting, and it's got to change.
Absolutely. How did you find out that cannabis would help with your cancer and pain and everything? Was it something someone recommended to you, or did you research it?
I did a little bit of research online. Now, I had used cannabis before recreationally, but to be honest with you, I thought the concept of medical cannabis was just a talking point. I thought when people really started pushing the idea of medical cannabis, I thought that was just an angle that the activist community was using to try to, break down the barriers of prohibition, which I'm more than happy with. I'm like, whatever you've got to do, whatever angle you have to use to tear down this archaic prohibition that we have going on, go with that, right? But, when I got sick, I just started, the thought of aggressive chemotherapy was pretty terrifying. And, I just did a little homework online, and I wanted to see, how are people getting through this aggressive treatments? How are they doing it without pharmaceuticals? Because I knew I didn't want to take any of that stuff for as long as I could avoid it. And cannabis just kept coming up in the conversations and in forums and in things I was reading. So I made sure that I had some before my first treatment, and I had resolved to. I basically said, I'm going to use cannabis for pain and nausea and appetite stimulation for as long as it works. If I get to a point where it doesn't work, then I'll talk to the doctors and the nurses, and the staff taking care of me about other options. But for me, it worked the entire time. So, it was basic, just reading online. There's a lot of good resources out there. And basically, I wanted to read other people's testimonials. I wanted to know, like, okay, if you've been here, how did you get through it? And cannabis kept coming up. And I thought, okay, well, let's try this. And it worked.
Absolutely. So technically, you could have been arrested for, like, during that time that you were trying to treat your cancer?
Technically, we passed, the West Virginia Medical Cannabis Act was passed during the 2017 legislative session, and it was signed into law on April 19th, 2017. And I could get arrested right now for possessing medical cannabis just because our program has still yet to be, it's not implemented. It's every, trying to say it and be as diplomatic and polite as possible. Every roadblock they could possibly conceive to throw up in the way of the implementation of this program, they've done it. So, while I'm glad to see that things are finally starting to move forward, the window closed. There was a 3-month window for growers and processors and dispensary owners to submit their applications and start that process. That process was closed on February 18th, so I'm hoping we'll know here real soon who these entities are that will be running it. And I actually have a medical cannabis advisory board meeting in the middle of June, so I'll know more, in a month or so. But it's super frustrating, And another problem that I have with the program, they set up this arbitrary list of conditions. So, in the way the medical cannabis game runs nationally, there's not a state where a doctor can prescribe medical cannabis, right? Where it's a federally Schedule I substance, they can't prescribe it or they'll lose their DEA license to prescribe everything else. All they can do is either recommend that you can use cannabis, or like in West Virginia, they can sign off that you have one of these qualifying conditions. And, the list of conditions is pretty hardcore. There's a lot of things that we know people that live in what I like to refer to as the free states are benefiting tremendously from cannabis. We can't even get their conditions added to the list. So we got a lot to work on, but
is PTSD on the list?
PTSD is on the list.
That's good at least, but my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So, there's a lot of shit wrong with Biden, but in respect to that, how worried are you that our potential nominee thinks that it's a gateway drug and doesn't support legalizing it?
To be honest with you, I've lost so much faith in the national side of things. It's so corrupt and it's so bought and paid for that, the big moneyed interests are going to get what they want. And it's frustrating to know that we had an opportunity to nominate somebody who not only wants to end prohibition, but wants to do it for the right reason. Not because he's got dollar signs in his eyes and can see what we could do for the economy, but because this is a criminal justice issue. This is a civil rights issue. And, it's disheartening to see how quickly the establishment will work to stop that kind of progress. But, I'm laser focused on what can we do in this little part of the world. In West Virginia, the one beautiful thing about West Virginia, and even when you're trying to navigate the political arena here, our legislature is relatively small. If you only had a week to go up there and lobby for an issue, you could talk to probably half of our elected officials in that amount of time. So you can make those systemic changes in a place like West Virginia. And I think that in order for prohibition to fall nationally and, in order to see the kind of changes that we want to see nationally take place, they're going to have to happen here. They're going to have to happen in places like this. And we've seen it before, with the labor uprising, with the mine wars, and with the teachers' strike in 2018. Eventually West Virginians get fed up. And when they do, they get together. And when they get together, change happens. So, I'm just laser focused on the grassroots army that we're building here in West Virginia to make these changes. And I'm hoping that reflects, at the ballot box this June 9th.
Absolutely. Do you guys have mail-in voting ahead of June 9th as well?
Well, they're letting all registered voters use an absentee ballot because of the situation with the COVID-19. But rather than just mailing everybody a ballot, they sent everybody a ballot application. So
That's what we had to do in Pennsylvania.
yeah, and that's not the fault. To my knowledge, that's not the fault of the Secretary of State here. That's the way that statute dictates it has to be done. So, in order to just send everybody a ballot, which is the way I think it should be done, that will require legislative change. So, hopefully, if we can get a lot of like-minded folks elected, that's a change we can make.
Yeah, don't complain that people aren't voting if you make it this whole huge process. It's bananas.
Right.
So as far as what you're running for, who are you running against?
Well, that's a interesting question because I look at it in two ways. Now, it's a 4-member district. Right now, there are 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. One of the Republicans is stepping out to run for the Senate seat here in the district. It's becoming vacant. Senator Palumbo is leaving, so Delegate Nelson is running for that, and Delegate Byrd, one of the Democrats in this district, just recently became a father, so he's taking a break from politics. So there's 2 open seats. 2 of the 4 will be open. So it's interesting. It's kind of weird. Even the Republican delegate that serves in this district, Moore Capito, he's actually Shelley Moore Capito's son. I've worked with him on cannabis reform issues. He's been pretty good on these things. So I've got working relationships with all these delegates, and it's kind of weird now that I'm running for a seat in the same district. So I don't like the whole us versus them breakdown. I don't like it that hey, I'm running against you. No, I'm running against the ideas that have kept you in that seat for 16 years or 10 years or whatever it is. That's the way I'm looking at it. Like, I'm not running against anybody specifically. I'm running for these principles that I think can make West Virginia a better place for everybody.
Absolutely. We have a comment from Nathaniel. He said, West Virginia can't wait. Logan County captain here.
Awesome.
Do you know who that is?
Yeah. Hello, Nathaniel. That's great. And I'm sure I know you've had Stephen Smith on, and
oh yeah,
you're familiar with the West Virginia Can't Wait, pledge and all of that. Like,
yes.
There's things going on in West Virginia that I'm not sure that I've seen in my lifetime anywhere else. So it's exciting to be here and watch it and be a part of it.
Absolutely. So, are there other Dems running for your position as well?
Yeah, there'll be 4 Democrats. On June 9th, there'll be 4 Democrats that make it through the primaries, and there's actually 8 of us running right now. So it's a crowded race.
But, yeah, well, tell them to drop out so you get it automatically, because that's where I thought you were going, and I was like, really? That's amazing.
No, but the thing is, we've put in the work. My team, before the stay-at-home order was done or was issued, we'd already been out knocking on doors since about Thanksgiving of last year. So, we had a nice head start on everyone running anyways. And I know that the moderates running would be more than happy to try to sell you the narrative that people don't care about cannabis reform. But that's not at all true. Some of the comments and well wishes we received while knocking on doors were from, the little old lady that you would never expect to know what's going on with cannabis reform. And I would knock on the door and she would answer, or she answered and said, "Hey, Rusty, great to see you." So people are paying attention to this issue. And I'm hoping that, with the work that we've put in and just, I guess, me talking so loud and being out in front on this issue for so long, I'm hoping that's enough to get me through the primary and will allow me to focus on, running against the Republicans and taking one of those seats.
Absolutely. What now that you can't go door to door and you're doing mostly phone banking, what is something that you're hearing from people in your district that they're most concerned with?
Well, we changed things up. We basically did the same thing that Stephen is doing with his phone banking. I don't have it in me to call and campaign in a traditional sense when so many people are hurting, so many people are without work. They don't know if they're going to have jobs when this is over with. we're not funded by the extraction industries and pharmaceutical industries like every other candidate, typically runs their campaigns in West Virginia. We've been focused on the small dollar donations, and as soon as this happened, this was all kind of like a flashback for me, because I've already been quarantined. I know what it's like to have to stop working and deal with an illness, and I know how scary this could be. So we changed our whole field plan, and we've just been calling folks to check on them, making sure that they're okay. We have a Google document that's updated anonymously by 5 or 6 different sources every day, so it's updated in real time. If someone needs help getting groceries ordered, if they need help navigating the absentee ballot process, or they need to find a COVID testing site, we've been plugging them in with that information. And the only question I've been asking when I'm phone banking is, are you planning to participate in the primary election? And if they say yes, we ask them if they because we're advocating that people vote from home with an absentee ballot or ballot to stay safe. And aside from that, we're just checking on our neighbors. I don't have it in me to call and ask people for money and try to talk politics when I know that whether or not folks want to realize it, everyone is in some state of survival mode, basically. It's like when your whole routine gets disrupted, you're not going to work like you do every day, everything gets changed up. That does something to your thought process. And a lot of people, especially with as negative as the national politics, the discourse surrounding our national politics is constantly in their face, and it's always negative. People don't want to hear that. So I've come to find that just doing what we should be doing anyways, which is calling to check on our neighbors and ask, hey, how can we help you? That's been our message so far, and I'm sticking with that, because to me, it's just the right thing to do.
Hell yeah, absolutely. Now you guys have the Medicaid expansion in West Virginia, right?
We do.
So as far as healthcare goes, besides Medicare for all, is there anything that you're trying to get past, or is it kind of all inclusive with Medicare for all?
Well, there's not much that can be done on the state level, for the office that I'm as far as pushing Medicare for all. Now, we could push resolutions to have the House members, urge our national delegation to push for Medicare for all, or to support Medicare for all. But we do, we like to try to strengthen Medicaid as much as we can. Like last session, I was happy to see there was a bipartisan effort to add dental coverage. I think it's up to $1,000 a year for Medicaid patients, which I think that's great. And I also was fortunate to travel to Canada with the Team for Insulin, West Virginia Team for Insulin Affordability. And when we came back, we immediately started pushing a piece of legislation that would have capped monthly insulin co-pays at $25 a month. Now, that was a very contested fight. Grassroots got that bill across the finish line, but once it got through and got chopped up by the pharmaceutical executives and the lobbyists, it's $100 cap on monthly insulin co-pays here. But it's that's a lot better than somebody paying $480, $500 a month just for their insulin. So I'm looking at healthcare in West Virginia as it's an all-inclusive thing, because to me that also includes reproductive healthcare. I was absolutely disgusted to see Amendment 1 pass here in West Virginia, which basically says that you don't have the right to, a woman doesn't have the right to an abortion in West Virginia. And I think when it comes to women's rights and reproductive health care, just like cannabis, West Virginia, we're moving in the wrong direction. And to me, that's something that I'm willing to go and fight for.
Yeah, absolutely. What is something else you're passionate about trying to change? I see on your website you state collective bargaining. Is that in reference to unions? You want more places to unionize?
Absolutely. And I think public workers in West Virginia need the right to unionize and collectively bargain for better salaries and better benefits. Absolutely. I come from a strong union family. So I'm all about, strengthening unions here and doing everything we can to make sure that the working person, their interests are taken care of, not the corporations that have been, robbing us blind of our resources and our health. But another thing that I really, I believe strongly in is we need to establish a state bank in West Virginia. West Virginia, we have some very fertile farmland here, and to me, it's kind of absurd that we have a $7.5 billion annual food import deficit. That's something that it just shouldn't be. We should be subsidizing and helping our small West Virginia farmers get back into the game. There's no reason why we should be importing all this food that West Virginia farmers could build a life growing here. So that's a state bank is another major thing. I see a question on the side. What about transgender healthcare? Where do you stand on that? I stand the same as I do. Transgender healthcare is healthcare. Period. To me, it shouldn't even be. It's not a question. If someone transitioning, their hormones, their surgeries, whatever, that's healthcare. We are the richest country in the history of the world. Everyone deserves health care, period.
Absolutely. What is your minimum wage in West Virginia?
I think the minimum wage here now is like $7.25 an hour, I believe.
Exactly what ours is in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and I mean, that's crazy. I remember now this is going to tell you how old I am. But
I'm older than you.
Well, how's that?
I just turned 41.
I'm right there with you. I'm 41. I'll turn 42 in October.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you remember $4.25 minimum wage, right? Yeah. When my first job was like $4.25 an hour, and I remember when it was increased to $7.25 when I was young, and I thought, wow, this is great. And now here I am in my 40s, and I'm like, it's still the same. Like, this is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. I believe that every working person deserves a living wage. Everyone. If you're going to work, and I don't care what the job is, you deserve a living wage, period. And the fact that we let these corporations like Walmart and Amazon and all these entities like Netflix, if you subscribe to Netflix, you paid more last month for your subscription than they paid last year in federal taxes. That's absurd to me. There's no reason why working people in this country shouldn't be making a living wage.
Absolutely. What is your district mainly blue collar?
Yeah, well, it's a mix, but yeah, most of West Virginia is most of this whole state is blue collar. Most West Virginians, there's that old saying where they talk about how hard work equals wealth. No, that's not true. If that was a true statement, West Virginians would be the richest people you could ever run into, because it's always been hard. It's always been hard to live here. It's always been hard to raise a family here. Even when our coal industry was kicking out coal at peak levels, when our coal industry was booming, the people of West Virginia still teetered 47th, 48th, 49th economically. It's always been hard going here. So, but my district, it's a big district. It encompasses the cities of Nitro, St. Albans, Institute, Jefferson, Dunbar, South Charleston, Spring Hill, South Hills, and some of Canal City. So it's a massive district, and there's a nice mix of all walks of life in this district. So it's an interesting place to run.
You also have accessible government. What does that mean to you?
To me, you should be able to, and now I can't change the way that our elected representatives do their business, right? Like, I can't change the way, there's some of these folks. I was appointed to the patient advocate position on the West Virginia Medical Cannabis Advisory Board in 2017 by the governor, right? There are still lawmakers that And I mean, I'm there every day. If the lawmakers are there, I'm there. And there's lawmakers that will not talk to me. They don't want to talk about the issue. They know what I'm there doing. They don't want to talk to me. To me, that's not the way that goes. If I'm elected to represent the people of the 35th district, they should be able to reach out to me at any time about any issue, period. And that's what you're doing. If you're not going to be accessible to your constituents, then why are you running for office? Is it a vanity thing for you? I don't understand that. If you don't want to truly get in and serve the people in your district, then what's the point? So I've vowed that if I'm fortunate enough to win this election, I don't care what the conversation is, what the topic is. I'll have the difficult conversations. I'll have conversations with people who look at the world completely differently than I do. But I want the people to know that if they reach out to me and they ask me a question, they will get an answer.
Right on. How do you think your state is handling COVID right now? Do you think that they're doing an okay job, or what would you do differently?
West Virginia, our numbers are low, which I'm thankful for that. But when you look at how many people that we've tested, those numbers are also low. This isn't a state where people travel a lot. So I think that has helped us. We got a lot of rural communities and all of that. But I'm very frustrated that the federal money that was allocated to go help West Virginia small businesses and people with unemployment, like gig workers and contract workers and that sort of thing, our government set on it, and they waited for it to be okay to shore up the hole in the budget, for the mistakes they made the previous few sessions, with money that should have gone to the people of West Virginia. And, I'm just disgusted by, again, it's the people with the wrong priorities are running the show. Now, that being said, I am fortunate. I will say it's fortunate to say that our governor is listening to the health professionals. I do think that if the doctors in West Virginia said, hey, it's getting bad, you're going to have to shut it down again, I think the governor would do the right thing and shut it down. So I'll give him credit in that sense. But when it comes to the monies that were allocated to go and help small businesses and people, no, that ball couldn't have been dropped any harder.
I'm in Pennsylvania, and our state is going green tomorrow, and I'm terrified because while they're talking about it going green and everything opening up, there's numbers on the screen that are saying there's still 900 something new cases every single day. I'm not changing. I'm still not going in places. I'm still wearing masks. Like I don't trust people. You see them at the beaches and stuff, like, on top of each other. That's what scares the shit out of me, because it's not going to go anywhere if people are doing crap like that.
Oh, I agree. And for the people watching, wear a mask. It's not for you. You're not wearing a mask for you. You're wearing a mask for people walking around with compromised immune systems. You're walking around to protect the elderly, to protect people who, if they get this, you may be fine. You could get it and recover and go about your life with a story to tell about how you got COVID, but somebody that has experienced the health issues that I've experienced, or people that go through things like fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis and these sorts of things where they're struggling every single day, and their immune systems, it's what these autoimmune diseases are. Their immune systems basically are attacking their bodies on a normal basis. I just think that it's very selfish to not consider that when you're going out. I get it. Nobody wants to stay home. Say I was quarantined for a long time. It's not fun, but neither is laying in a hospital bed. Neither is watching somebody that you love and somebody that you care about laying in a hospital beds struggling to breathe. So to me, it's just a simple, even no matter how hardcore you may feel, it's just a simple gesture that you actually give a shit about your neighbor. And to me, we shouldn't have to beg people to do it.
Absolutely. as far as right now with your race, is there anything you want to say that you are different, that you want to make clear that you are different from the other people who are running as Dems against you?
Well, to me, this is all personal. This is all personal. I'm not running because, I think I could do this, or, I'm not running because I want, it's my life's goal to be a career politician or anything like that. I'm running because I've experienced exactly, how bad it can get when somebody is forced to navigate our for-profit healthcare system with a life-threatening illness, and no insurance. I know what it's like to wonder where you're going to lay your head and where you're going to get food, because, the cancer, the situation that you had just gone through devastated you financially, right? All of these scenarios that lawmakers like to talk about, I've experienced a lot of this stuff. And one thing I will say, there's some great people running for office in the 35th district. There's a couple candidates that, I would be more than happy if they were representing me, so to me, that's why I like to say that I'm not running against anybody. I'm running against the ideas that have put West Virginia in the terrible place that we're all in right now. But one thing I will say does separate me from, especially the new candidates running. Nothing is going to happen in West Virginia. We've got a red legislature. Nothing's going to happen until you can build relationships with folks on the other side of the aisle and work together with them. And those relationships are hard. It's some, like I say, there's some lawmakers that after nearly a decade still don't want to talk to me. But I have built relationships across the aisle that, it's not going to take me 2 years to go in and get a bill introduced. I'm confident that I could come in with a cannabis bill, with a cannabis legalization, full legalization bill, and have a full list of bipartisan sponsors the first day of session. And I think that the relationships that I've built in the time that I've spent advocating for patients is going to be crucial actually getting legislation moving.
Absolutely. I digress, but with, you mentioned George Floyd a little bit ago, and I know as an activist, I am going bananas not being able to be in the streets right now. So I imagine you kind of feel similar. What do you want to say to people who are watching, who are in pain right now, who just, need a message on something hopeful?
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty heavy. I don't know what to say to the people that are hurting. I know that words don't really mean anything in situations like this, but I do want folks to know that we're hurting too with you. My heart hurts for our whole country right now. You grow up with this this narrative, all through school and everything, that everybody's, our country is the greatest country in the world, and everybody's treated equal and fair here, and this is the country where you go to get a fair shot. And African Americans have never had a fair shot here. People of color have never had a fair shot. People with disabilities never had a fair shot. The LGBTQ community never had a fair shot. And it hurts to see how quick people are to dismiss just how bad it is because it doesn't personally affect them. You know what I mean? Like, get out of your comfort zone, get out of your bubble, read and study every word that's ever come out of Jane Elliott's mouth. Read the works of Michelle Alexander. Every white person in America needs to read The New Jim Crow and watch 13. And, everybody needs to read Johann Hari, Chasing the Scream. Especially if you're working on any kind of social work issues, if you're working on substance abuse issues and things like that. I think it's crucial that people know that the roots, again, I say it every time they put a camera in my face, the roots of prohibition are deeply seated in racist soil. Every single day that our lawmakers sit in office, and allow these cannabis prohibition and this war on drugs to continue, they're getting a little more complicit in the perpetuation of institutional racism and slavery. And if you want this to stop, you elect people that will call it out and elect people that will enact policies to call this stuff out and to actually change it, because the status quo has just turned this place into a great big mess. And it's hard to sleep knowing that there's a city that is in so much pain that it's literally burning right now for an act of hate that should have never happened in the first place. The fact that our police officers are so poorly vetted that this stuff is perpetuated in every state every day is disgusting. And we need some major reforms, and we need to elect people that have the guts to go in and challenge these systems of oppression, challenge these structures of white supremacy, because that's exactly what it is, and start to tear that down and rebuild this system in a way that is fair, for truly fair for everybody. Because right now it's absolutely not. I wish I had some super positive words of encouragement, like I say, for the white folks watching this and then following that, and do better, educate yourselves. This is on us. This is on us to fix. The Black and brown communities, they've been fighting and trying to fix this system and make this a more fair, equitable country since day one. My heart just goes out to everybody. My heart goes out to his family. I don't even know what to say in these instances anymore. I mean, they're so frequent. It seems like you can't get on the internet, you can't turn on the news without reading or seeing something like this. And to me, it's gross.
It is, absolutely. And not just on the topic of racial inequality and what have you. Since Byrne dropped out, a lot of us are feeling very defeatist. We're feeling very like, what's the point in voting? Why, just kind of like, what's the point? We can't win. What do you want to say to people who still haven't voted in their primary yet?
That's the mentality the machine wants you to have. The machine, like, I'm with you. I was super disappointed when Senator Sanders dropped out. I was super disappointed when the machine rallied against him on Super Tuesday. But they want us demoralized. If we're demoralized and we don't show up to the polls, then business as usual. They can do whatever we want. But I've been watching and following politics for a long time, and I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. Nothing worth doing is ever easy, and I feel like Bernie lit the torch. Bernie is the one that lit the torch, and then he handed it to the rest of us, and it's up to us to use it to burn these corrupt systems to the ground. And I'm a firm believer that we're not going to kumbaya our way out of this. We're not going to internet rage our way out of this. No, we're going to have to go to the polls, and we're going to have to go to the polls en masse. And, it's like we met over that video that Senator Sanders had shared, right? And I remember at the end of my remarks that day, I said, if there's not a candidate running in your district that stands up for you and what you believe in, then be the candidate. And, I feel like that's how we win this fight. Again, I was disappointed that he dropped out, but I understand why he dropped out. I do. Not that, and I don't think he dropped out because he didn't think he could win. I personally, no, I have no idea. This is just my opinion, but I think he dropped out because Bernie's such a good dude. He didn't want to put his supporters in danger by sending them to the polls.
100%.
And to me, Bernie, he'll always be my president. Period. He's inspired a nation of people to not just start talking about these hard issues. It's like, because again, with the situation with George Floyd, you know, these conversations are hard. They're going to be hard, you know, and we have got to be willing to have the hard conversations and do the work. We're going to have to look at ourselves in the mirror and put ourselves in check. And you know, I'm a firm believer that if we stand united, we can have the country that we want. You know, again, I go back to referencing what we did with medical cannabis here in West Virginia. That wasn't supposed to happen. You know, the Medical Cannabis Act, we were told about the Speaker of the House would pass, quote, over his dead body. And, you know, the people uniting, the West Virginia citizens uniting and making so much noise, you couldn't walk down the hallway of either side of that building without the phones blowing up and secretaries coming out. Hey, could you please call the dogs off? You know, the people did that. And again, with the teachers' strike, teachers got together and they were like, no, we're not having it. We're not having this anymore. You know, we outnumber you. You work for us. And they put our lawmakers in check. And I think that, you know, for the people that are demoralized, use it. It's like Henry Rollins said, this isn't crying time. This is punk rock time. This is what we're changing for. Go to the polls and vote for the candidates that you believe in and that are going to represent you the best way. And if they lose, organize and do it again. And no matter how hard it is, organize and do it again. The fight is way too important to just stay home and let them win without us, you know, throwing punches back. So please go and vote on election day.
Absolutely. So District 35, vote for Rusty. Absolutely. And also Bernie's on the ballot. So you better select him too. So we at least have a voice at the convention. Where can people find you? Your website, your Facebook, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, you can find me rustywilliamswv.com. You can find me at Rusty Williams for House on Facebook. And I think it's the same thing. Rusty Williams WV on Instagram as well. So yeah, my email address is rustywilliamswv@gmail.com if anybody's got any questions. And yeah, feel free to hit me up about anything.
All right. Thank you so much, Rusty. I love you to pieces and I wish you so much luck.
Thank you too. It's been awesome talking with you. This is cool. Like, I appreciate you having me on again, and I appreciate everything you're doing. Like, our media is screwed up. We need as many people spreading truth as we can. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, guys. Everyone have a good night.